on my average views.
Well, they keep messing with us, but we'll keep fighting back.
Yeah.
Peter, good evening. Michael, good evening. Everybody at home, good evening, because we are 2 minutes late going live this evening on St. Patty's Day. Chalk it up to the fog of the Irish Spring.
We are just rambling on in the background. That's why.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of stuff going on right now that I guess people are still trying to catch up with. So we're expecting a slow night tonight. We might even call it a little bit earlier tonight. Who the hell knows? Rather than going into our third hour as we've normally been doing. It's been a long day for all of us, I'm sure. Mr. Soma, how are you this evening?
I'm taking it 1 second at a time, as always. How about you, gentlemen?
Doing well, or at least as well as social media will allow.
Yeah, I'm doing
Fun.
as well as I do. Happy Leprechaun Day, Dal. Good to see you, my friend. We updated the inappropriate language and guidelines we announced on November 30th. That's a notification I just received from YouTube. They've updated their
Yeah,
inappropriate language. Let me explain something to YouTube. The language that I use in whatever video format I'm working in, whether live, recorded, or Memorex or whatever language I use is pretty goddamn appropriate for the situation I'm dealing with in hand. So if I should decide to drop an F bomb, an S bomb, a MF bomb, or whatever bomb I decide to drop, it's because that bomb needs to be dropped at that particular moment in time. So I think it's pretty appropriate. It's not up for you to decide what's appropriate. It's up to the audience to decide if it's appropriate content for them, not for you to decide what's appropriate for them to see. That you should decide to censor us because you don't approve of our content. It's
well,
not
wait,
for you to approve of our content.
but it's not even that they don't approve of it. It's within the first 30 seconds. So for the first 30 seconds of a video, if you use certain colorful language, that's when they will demonetize and or limit the exposure. But they don't care if you go for the next 12 hours after that cursing up a storm. They could care less. It's the first 30 seconds.
Yeah, well,
That's crazy.
sometimes the first 30 seconds are the most impactful because most people only have the attention span of 32 and a half seconds. So if I need to say it, I'm going to say it right from the get-go. Now, the problem I'm having with YouTube is that on the regular on the range report YouTube channel, shit is about the most common phrase that I will use that you could consider explicit in any way, shape, or form. However, YouTube may be reminded that that word has been allowed on network television since the year 2000 when NYPD Blue was the first television show to use it. So I think you can afford to jump with the 23 years into the curve and say, hey, you know what? That's not a bad word anymore. Not when there's a TV show on cable called Bullshit, the game, and when
I got
TV
one
show
for you.
shit.
I got one for you. Disney has a show called Kick Ass.
Yeah, there's
Okay,
that.
well, there's also a popular television program that is the only way I have found so far to fool Alexa into saying a naughty word, and that's the TV show that's starred by Eugene Levy called Schitt's Creek.
Oh yeah.
It's spelt differently but pronounced exactly the same. That show is perfectly fine for them to say on television. It's perfectly fine for them to say that. Now, if I ask Alexa, does she hear me? Is she in here? Well, whichever one of those things, the only way that she'll say that word, or any curse word for that matter, is if you download the Samuel L. Jackson app that Alexa now comes to you in Samuel L. Jackson's voice and he'll say every curse word under the sun, but you have to pay for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have an Alexa and you've been trying to get her to curse, ask her what the name of the television program starring Eugene Levy on television is. And she'll be forced to say Schitt's Creek because it's not spelt the same way. But if you ask her to say what is this? What is a terminology for a female dog? She will not say it. If you ask her what Meredith Brooks's number one hit song was on the radio at the time, she will not say the name of that song either. Ask her to say what WAP stands for. She will not say it. They're so concerned over the electronic devices that we have dominion over about them saying bad things, but they have absolutely no problem with broadcasting all the things that are representative of the things they won't say.
Well, you know what the reason?
It's just such hypocrisy.
Well, it's because a lot of this is built around the idea of frustrating people to disencourage them from having conversation, from engaging in the content, to absorb it. You're meant to accept the approved messaging the way that they want to present the approved messaging, and there can be no rebuttal or any kind of reflection on that. They will sell WAP and they'll show the video to your children all day long, but you can't make commentary on it because, well, now you've crossed the line. It's the selective censorship meant only to annoy. It's like what we were talking about, what's happening right now behind the scenes. People don't get to see this, but for content creators, they are jury rigging the algorithms towards short videos, and they're blocking content and suppressing content merely to frustrate the content creators so that we give up and just do what they approve just so that we can be seen. And if you don't, well, now they're going to go after you. They'll find ways to say, oh, well, see, you're not doing what's approved. You're being punished. It's all meant to dumb down the public. It's all meant to convince the public to obey. It's removing your First Amendment rights.
And the same people who are running this operation are the same people behind having scantily clad or mostly naked men dressed in female garb shaking their genitalia in your 4-year-old child's face.
Yep.
Or teaching them about sexual behavior in kindergarten with storybook time and all the rest of that. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. But if somebody, God forbid, should happen to, utter the word bullshit somewhere, you're censored. You're off the mark. It's just absolutely absurd. The world is crazy, but I think we're almost on the precipice of revival.
Okay.
I think enough people
So
are starting to have enough.
I don't know about that.
So I showed up a little bit late. So I apologize for that.
No excuse.
Here's
No
how
excuse.
the FCC defines what's deciding what's obscene, indecent, or profane. Okay. Obscene content does not have the protection of the First Amendment. For content to be ruled obscene, it must meet a 3-pronged test established by the Supreme Court. It must appeal to an average person's prudent interest, depict or describe sexual conduct in a patently offensive way, and taken as a whole, lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Indecent conduct portrays sexual or excretory organs or activities in a way that is patently offensive but does not meet the 3-pronged test for obscenity. Profane content includes grossly offensive language that is considered a public nuisance.
Yeah, that's about as vague as you can make it, because you can make almost
Exactly.
anything fit into one of those 3 categories.
Yeah, well, depending upon what area of the public you're in, I'm sure that the good folks in Amish country, Pennsylvania, would be much more objective to some of the terms that I use on a daily basis than would be the people on one of them nice hilly streets in San Francisco. So I mean, depending upon what's the old phrase in entertainment, know your audience. But when they're just going to come out with blanket statements as far as that, now we still have we ever had resolution as far as social media companies as to whether or not they are considered broadcasters or publishers?
No, it's still
That
Section
is
230.
making its way up through the courts right now. It is still being figured out
There's a
whether or
major-
not they are considered a platform or whether or not they are considered
publishers.
Yeah, publishers.
Yeah, there's a lawsuit going on right now with Facebook, but there's also, and there has been talk for the last since 2018 about Section 230, which is supposed to determine that. Right now, they're protected and they are empowered, and depending on who you're talking about, you either have there's several Senate Democrats who are looking to increase the amount of government censorship, or you have another faction in Congress that says there needs to be less censorship, and everyone's confused. This is something that has yet to be, no one has a good determination on it.
Well, saying that somebody in government wants more censorship,
Mhm.
oh my God.
Senator Blumenthal.
Color me shocked and
It's,
surprised.
to be exact, it's Senator Blumenthal in 2019 during Senate hearings. People can look it up for themselves if they would like. He's out of Connecticut, and he was one of the proponents. There were several that were asking for increased censorship
Well, I wonder
under
why
the government's purview.
I wonder why a guy like Blumenthal, who tried so hard to hide the fact that he lied about his non-existent Vietnam combat experience, I wonder why a guy who's been caught in so many lies, one after another, would want to endorse any kind of censorship. Is it because there's something else he doesn't want somebody to mention, about him or his career or his record? Or is it they just want to be able to, control the narrative completely without ever letting the public have any access to the truth?
Well, I would say it's partially because he doesn't want people to know that in 2020, he was endorsed by the Socialist Party of the United States. He went to their dinner to speak as their honored guest and received donations from them, the Socialist Party, the Communist Party of America. And he doesn't like people to know that he, in fact, was getting money and was their honored guest, and he was a featured speaker at their event. He doesn't want people to notice that. In addition, he wants to help support what's the leading political preference in mainstream news media, whether it's Hollywood, the news media, television. What do you see? It's almost all entirely left-leaning and more so progressive ideology. And so by giving them more cover from Congress, well, they get to force their ideology through. And I'm sure you put the government in charge, and instead of Mr. Rogers, you'll have the drag show library hour in its place.
The objective is to replace Mr. Rogers with RuPaul.
That's my point.
Yeah, that's the objective. Well, as long as everybody keeps, pandering to it, it's not going to go away anytime soon. Being a kid, I remember the most risque thing I had seen along those lines was either Nipsey Russell portraying a certain character that he used to do, or Flip Wilson. It was Flip Wilson who did the character Nadine,
Geraldine.
I believe.
Geraldine.
Was the name of the character. And before that, Milton Berle.
Yeah.
And before that, Tony Curtis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Actually,
Monty Python did a skit too.
Except the thing is, all of those were done as a matter of satire. They were all done as a matter of tongue-in-cheek humor, stuff like that. It was the punchline of the joke. It was the punchline of the story. Now it's ever since I think the popularity of a show that was out on Broadway years ago called La Cage aux Folles. Gee, Frank, how old are you? I'm old. I remember shit. Back then these things they would just spend for entertainment value. That's all. Now they're not even. They've jumped past entertainment. They've passed. Well, this is lifestyle choice to now going into if you don't promote us, you're the devil. You know,
Well,
if you don't let us teach your kids how to do what we do, you're the devil.
Well, we remember from the movie version of the play, which is La Cage aux Folles, which is a French play originally. Everyone will remember it was called The Birdcage. That was the movie with he's
Robin
dead
Williams,
now.
Nathan Lane.
Robin Williams, and whatever his
Nathan
name
Lane.
is, Nathan Lane, and
Ian
the
Hackman.
thing, which was a funny movie, and Gene Hackman, that's right, and it's a funny movie. But
And
notice
Baranski.
it's interesting because it's adults in an adult venue having an adult conversation and having to work through the different feelings that the son, the parents, both sides of the parents and the daughter, they all had different levels of acceptance or resistance, and for various reasons come together to work together to get through all their issues for the sake of their children. Fantastic. And they all had interpersonal problems going on because of their various lifestyles. Okay. Now, that's a very measured approach, and they did it in a comedic way so it can be accepted, which is what comedy is there for. Take a difficult issue, make people laugh about it, but there's a deeper, more serious undercurrent in there to invite conversation. And nowadays they look at that and they say, but that's the reason why we should teach 8-year-olds to chop off their genitals. I'm sorry, you're making a leap off of a cliff into a volcano. I don't understand how you get from one to the other. Flip Wilson doesn't encourage kids to chop off their genitals. Neither does the Birdcage. You want to have a conversation about grown adults making grown decisions that will impact their life forever that I don't need to pay for. Fantastic. We can have that conversation. You start talking about 8, 12, 15-year-olds changing their bodies permanently and indoctrinating them to say, this is what you should do. There is no other option. There is no other choice. You're not gay. You're not bi. You're not any other thing. And there's supposed to be 62 different sexualities out there, but you're none of those things. You have to be this one thing, and we're making it popular. I'm sorry. That is a problem. And the Birdcage didn't bring us here. Flip Wilson didn't bring us here. It's the fact that someone is perverting what those two things were to justify the new thing they're doing, which is destroying our society. In my opinion, that's my opinion. I'll go on the hook for that one.
Well, all I know is if if adults want to engage in activity, adults engage in activity. It's what you do. It's what I don't give a shit. I don't give a damn one way or another what the hell you do. I don't give a damn one way or another what you do. But you know what they say about character is what you do when no one else is looking.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, if you can do something and you can be proud of it in front of nobody or proud of it in front of everybody, okay, fine, that's no problem. But if you do something that you wouldn't do in front of your kids, or you're going places, doing things, whatever that you wouldn't do in front of your kids, or bring those people back in front of your kids, why are you doing it? You know, why would you do it? Why would you do it? Why? And then why would you then at some point or another decide that you're going to expose your kids to that? Bring it into the schools and all the rest. I don't understand. I really don't understand the mentality of it. I can't. What are you going to do? I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit.
Here's what Rochester Medical University, or Rochester University of Medicine, has to say on it. Okay. Understanding teen brain. And the rational part of teen's brain isn't fully developed and won't be until age 25 or so. In fact, recent research has found the adult and teen brains work differently. Adults think with their prefrontal cortex, or the brain's rational part. This is part of the brain that responds to situations with good judgment and an awareness of long-term consequences. Teens process information with the amygdala. This is the emotional part. In teen brains, the connections between the emotional part of the brain and the decision-making center are still developing and are not always at the same rate. That's why teens have overwhelming emotional input. They can't explain later what they are thinking, and they weren't thinking as much as they were feeling.
What's progressive policy today? Feeling. It's all about feelings, not about logic or discussion. It's how do you feel? And feelings are more important than truth because truth is relative, which makes it a feeling.
So, and that's the thing on this whole thing, though. Prior to age 25, which we just saw documented by Rochester Medical University, I'm sure we can find other studies that have similar statements on this. Prior to age 25, the prefrontal cortex hasn't fully developed, and it hasn't it isn't primarily used in decision making. Okay. If you're using the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for fight or flight, it's part of the brain that controls your anger, sadness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're using that part of the brain to make long-term decisions about what your body is going to be like, you have no concept of what the long-term consequences are going to be.
Well, well, if you want to bolster this argument even further as to why it's so important for kids to not be exposed to so many things that are going to wind up being something that alters their life for the rest of their lives, if they should happen to go down this line, let's look at unintended pregnancies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What age group do you think has a higher percentage of unintended pregnancies? 15 to 19 or 29 to 35?
15 to 19, average age 17. I know the studies.
75% of unintended pregnancies in the United States are between the ages of 18, are between 15 and 19. Mm-hmm. 75%. Mm-hmm. Teenagers do not have the mental capacity because they haven't had enough life yet to understand what a consequence means longer than being grounded for a month. That's the longest thing that they worry about. That's the longest tenure of time that they worry about. As they grow up, it's, middle school, you have no consequences. Grade school, you have no consequences. You don't start really understanding what the concept of time is until you're in junior high school and high school. And then you start to relate to things in semesters. That's the longest period of time that you're really concerned with. Semesters, not trimesters, because most of the kids that are getting, pregnant in high school don't understand. There's no frame of reference. They don't have enough capacity yet to make sound decisions. That's why those numbers are so high. So why would you take people that have such an unreliable state of mind as far as judgment is concerned and allow them to even remotely think that they should be able to have affirmation therapy to confirm for them whether or not they should have their genitalia removed? Because this is not, while the common concept is, well, that's a woman. No, it's a man dressed as a woman. Well, that's a cosmetic thing. We're looking at we talk about it in a superficial frame of mind. It's a superficial cosmetic thing. But what people aren't realizing is that once they start going through these therapies, this affirming therapy and then hormone therapy and this therapy and surgery, you're not changing the cosmetics. You're taking a uterus out of a girl. That's it. There is no potential for that girl to ever reproduce at all. You're taking the testicles off of a 13, 14-year-old boy. That's it. The genetic line stops there. It's no longer a matter of cosmetic. It's a matter of you have now altered somebody to the point where you can't reverse it. You're talking about something that's irreversible, and the drugs that they're using are the same drugs that they use to chemically castrate prisoners. And people are looking at it. Sometimes I think those of us on one side of the spectrum that go, oh, well, you're making a cosmetic change. It doesn't mean one thing or another. It does mean something when you go so far to the extreme that you can no longer reproduce, and you can't just take off the dress at that point. You can't just take off the dress. It's too late. It's too far. You've done too much damage to yourself to ever reverse that again. See, like RuPaul, I'm pretty sure has got all his bits and pieces.
He does.
Okay. I'm pretty sure he's got all his bits and pieces. When he's all dressed up and dolled up and in the dress and everything else, he looks beautiful. He looks like a beautiful woman. Everyone can say, yeah, she looks great. But he's got his bits and pieces. These are the people that they're talking to about the next generation that they're trying to push into this life. Talk to the people who've gone through it and realize that they made a mistake.
They won't let those
are
people
the
talk.
people that we should be talking to about it.
Yeah, but they won't let those people talk. There have been people who've come out and
they
said,
won't.
And
they won't. We will.
Yeah, no, but social media will block and remove and have denied those people to have access to their voice because it's not affirming information. And let's think about this, because again, this is an affront to the First Amendment, which is why it's important for everyone. No matter where you may fall in your personal beliefs, the answer is, if the government is saying this is the affirmed speech, this is the approved message, and you cannot go against that approved message without facing consequence from the government, you have now chilled the First Amendment. You have entered into a dictatorship and an autocratic government. Because if they can say this is the approved message for whatever, then they can say it's the approved message for anything. At that point, you become a slave because it's about the affirming message. Well, guess what? It's life. There is always a balance. There is always a counter argument. Should make informed decisions, which means I have to hear the other side of the discussion to make sure I have made the right decision for me. Maybe you're just gay. Maybe there's what do they call it? Asexual or demisexual. I don't even know what these things are. You're maybe one of those things. You don't know until you become informed. And I can't be informed if all I'm getting is yes, 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 do it. Go ahead. Yes, I support you. That's affirmation. Affirmation without information is evil. And as I said in the quote, blind affirmation is not only evil, it leads us down a dangerous road when the government is the one that gets to decide what they affirm. It leads us to 1930s Germany. That is the ultimate path of blind affirmation without any information based on government approval. This is dangerous.
Well, it's also dangerous in another factor too, because there's one thing that a lot of people seem to gloss over in this argument is that there is a mental construct. There is a psychological construct that's behind a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a psychological construct in depression. And if we're going to tell people that affirmation therapy is what's needed so that we can help confirm what these people think, we're not that far away from having affirmation therapy so the people who are suffering from depression, bipolar disorder, or other mental issue that are feeling suicidal, it's not going to be too long before they start receiving affirmation therapy. Yeah, I understand that you don't feel good and the things, maybe that is the best thing for you. Maybe that is the best thing for you to alleviate your pain.
They're already doing that in Canada. They're already doing it.
And that was the next thing, is they're doing that in Canada. They're doing that in Canada for people that need life-saving medications or life-saving drugs, or they need something that Fidel Jr. doesn't want to have their government pay for because they have socialized medicine up there. That if you become too much of a burden on the system, they would prefer that you just kill yourself. They prefer that you just kill yourself, and that's part of that left wing ideology. That as soon as you don't form a useful function, that your burden becomes more of what you're producing. It's time for you to go. It's time for you to go. Well, there's going to be a lot of kids who are 13, 15, 17 years old now. 10 years from now, when they look back at their life and they look at who gave them what kind of affirmation to make them do something drastic, the next drastic thing is going to be for them to take their lives. And they're going to get affirmation therapy for that too. And this, if it's not stopped now, if it's not put a halt on, and people are not get their friggin' hands off of everybody's kids, you're going to have a rush of bad things happening soon. Bad things. And yeah, and they're going to call it another epidemic or something, and they'll try to point the finger of cause and causality and 1,000 other things, but none of them fingers will ever point back to what they initiated and what they promoted and what they
you know
pushed.
why you're right,
and it's not going to be the price.
You know what's scary,
It
Frank?
won't be them who pay the price.
Right now, and it has historically been approximately 45% suicide rate for individuals who've gone through these transitions. 45% historically. And that's when they had 0.5% of the population making these decisions. We now have somewhere between 6-7% of the population believing that they fall into this. This is an astronomical increase. And even if they're only 1% off, let's say only 1% of that is incorrect diagnosis and understanding, you're talking about tens of thousands of people who face a 45% suicide rate within 5 to 7 years. That's 10,000 additional youth that potentially, and now I'm assuming only 1% is incorrect. That's tens of thousands of youth that are going to be in this facing suicide within 5 years. That's the kids today who are 15, 17, who are going to be 20, 22, 25, realizing they may have made a terrible decision for their particular life that they can never correct. This is where we see the dangers of this. And again, once you start down this path, government never stops.
Once they figure out, they weren't happy with who they were, then they're going to find out that they weren't happy with who they became. They're going to be really unhappy when they find out that they can't go back. And what is at the end of that road? What is at the end of that road? That's it. It's done. It's done. That's the end of the road. And then why do people commit suicide? When they feel that there's no sense in going further. They can't go another day. They can't go. How can you possibly be happy with who you've become if you were never happy with who you were? You have to find happiness within who you are, and you have to become who you are emotionally, spiritually, mentally, build your life, build a success. You're never going to find happiness in trying to be somebody that you weren't born to be, and this is just going to be it's going to be a bad thing. It's going to be a bad thing. Save your kids now. Don't let them get to your kids.
Well, the good news is, I'll put some good news out there. Yesterday, for those who don't know, in the Binghamton, New York region, there was an event. A satanic cult, the Satanic Temple, wanted to go into an elementary school, Homer Brinker Elementary School. It's in Broome County, New York. And they were going to have an after-school club to introduce Satanism to these elementary school children. That was the plan. And it was supposed to happen yesterday. And there were a group of concerned parents and some citizens, not just in Broome County, but in several counties around here, Onondaga, Oneida, several counties in upstate New York. And parents and concerned citizens from several counties came to the school, peacefully protested on a corner. Not 100,000, not 1,000, not 100. We're talking about 20-ish people. Quiet, they were standing around, having conversations, had a couple of signs, guy on a guitar, and he happened to be religious and was singing about God. Okay, that's it. That was enough. That plus the fact that the parents that had their kids going to that school and the community did not want this. And so the Satanists gave up. They didn't hold the event. Mind you, and this is the important thing, no one said they couldn't do it. No one stopped them from having the event. No one restricted a single child or a single parent from going into a building or doing whatever they wanted to do. There was no restriction. I know. I live streamed the entire event.
I watched
it. So no one was restricted. No one was even near anything that would be called an entrance to the building. Could have gone in any kind of way they wanted to. They could have counter protested, which was one of the rumors that they had about it. And instead, the Satanist club, the Satanist temple, decided to cancel the event without justifying or talking to. There was at least 2 news media stations and myself covering the event. They could have came, talked to the public, talked to the individuals, justified their reason. They didn't. Here's the thing. When people speak up, it doesn't take a lot of people to make a positive change. And yes, I think it's positive that the Satanic Temple wasn't able to have a after-school Satan club to introduce children to Satan. I'm against that. That's me personally. That's my view. But I covered it regardless so people could see what was happening. No one needed to get arrested, and no one was. No property got destroyed. No American was denied their rights to speak or to take action. No child was interfered with in any way. And all it took was 20 parents in person standing up and saying, we object to this. We think this is not appropriate for children, especially in elementary school. And we are opposed to this organization. That's all it took. And they changed the outcome. That's the good news. We can, and when people are watching this thing, you say, oh, my vote doesn't matter and no one's paying attention. It doesn't take a lot of people, but you do need to take action. You need to speak up and be heard.
Well, can you do a little follow-up on that for me if you can? Because this is the question that I have about that. Now, like I said, I don't care what group wants to meet where. If the Satanists want to, rent out the, local catering hall and throw a party, a nice soiree, and invite the public to come and do a meet and greet and see what they're all about. Hey, what do I care? Don't bother me. You're inviting people to come to you. You're not going to them. You're inviting people to come to you. It shouldn't be protested. It shouldn't be, banned. None of that shit. If you're holding an event that people come to you for, fine. Ain't got no problem with it. But could you please find out whether or not the school, how did it culminate that this event was going to take place at the school? See, these are my questions. Who contacted the school about holding the event? Who at the school decided to approve hosting the event? That's what I'd like to know. And the third thing that I'd like to know is if the CYA, Catholic Youth Association, or a Jewish group or a Muslim group or another group decided that they wanted to go to the same school and introduce the same kids to their religious doctrine, would the doors be so casually left open to allow them to come in and do their presentation as well? Because as far as I can tell, none of them should be going into a public school.
Yes, but I can answer your questions. So it was the Satanist temple that decided to come to Endwell. They were the ones who decided that they wanted to be in there. And they've been doing that at several locations in upstate New York.
All right. But who at the school? Who at the school principal said, yes, you can host your event here to introduce your temple to our students? Well, to the supervisor, to the students that we caretake while their parents allow us to, because they're not their they're not their kids.
The board of supervisors approved it on the basis that if they didn't, it would be a restriction of the First Amendment. And so they had to approve it, no matter what any individual may have thought. And that if any other group of any religious type wanted to do a similar type of club, they would allow them to do it as well.
All right. Now, did the ACLU chapter of Broome County show up at the school to say that the board of supervisors, by allowing this organization to hold this event inside of a public school, that this was a violation of the separation of church and state, because it could be construed as though the board of supervisors has endorsed the Satanic Temple to come into a public school to hold their event?
UCLA
because I'm certain the ACLU would be there if St. Patrick's Church decided it wanted to hold a function at the school.
The ACLU had nothing to comment on this, did not get involved whatsoever. In fact, every political organization that I'm aware of in covering this, and this is covered by 3 mainstream media outlets and myself, and I have spoken to one of the organizers of the event prior to this back in February. So I've covered this a little bit. They've all had access, and no political figure would touch this. No political organization would touch this. They did not have comments, and they did not want to get involved. It was the school supervisors talking to the media and to parents. The Satanic Temple made one statement to the news media, and the only other thing that came out about this was yesterday in the coverage, we found out after the time that the event was supposed to start that the Satanic cult by themselves said no, they weren't going to hold it. In part, 1, because of the protest, 2, no parents sent their kids. 2 separate things happening at the same time.
All right. Well, then let's give the Satanic Temple their due, because they had to seem to have a little bit more common sense than the people that allowed it to take place at that facility.
Well, as I understand, and looking at these kind of events throughout New York State and now growing across the country, they're not doing it to promote themselves as much as they're trying to use that to take any aspect. They want to promote a non-secular viewpoint. They want to distance people from any aspect of God in any form. In schools, children, like saying the Pledge of Allegiance, you can't do that. They're promoting that movement. It's basically an attack using the First Amendment against anyone else, because if they can't do it, then everyone can't do it, even if the community that they're trying to get into doesn't want them.
Well, look, that's all. The Satanic Temple is not Satan worshipers. Like you said, they're using that moniker as a means of striking back against all religions. More than likely, they're mostly agnostics or atheists that don't believe in one deity either way, but they're using that because, 1, it's going to grab headlines, and 2, if it shows that they can be either that group can be marginalized, then other religious groups should be marginalized. And if they're not marginalized, then they benefit too, because then they get people riled up to show up at a protest, which gets more people to get to know their name. They get more attention. Yes, we are sitting here talking about it right now. So mission accomplished, Satanic Temple. You've done what you've done. The question is, though, why are we allowing these school boards to host any religious organization under any circumstances for any reason? You shouldn't be hosting any of them, period. If you want to have a separation of church and state, and you don't want to have any sort of religious dogma being preached on school grounds to public school children when their parents are not there, then you have to have all of it be expunged. But if you're going to also do that, you're also going to have to commit the ultimate sin and expunge all political viewpoints. from the children being exposed. And then sure, they're not going to want to do that.
No, not in this climate. But
No, not when I'm looking at your background and I see the same American flag that's hanging over mine. I noticed it's only 3 colors on that one. I'm sure there's flags in that school that are got a hell of a lot more colors than just red, white, and blue on them.
Oh, guaranteed. But let
And
me
that
ask,
in and of itself is a new religion.
so let's go. How about Pete? What are your thoughts on that? And I know, Mike, you have something to say about with First Amendment thoughts, but
Yeah, so
Pete,
far
you're
just
being quiet. I know it's like
I'm sorry, guys.
We're just watching you guys play ping pong back and forth. It's all good. I can blink.
hey, Jan. But go ahead. What do you think, Pete?
Merry holiday, Jen.
I don't know. I think it's another group that's just testing the system, testing the waters, and seeing what they can get away with, how far they can take it. And it's kind of a little bit of what Frank was alluding to in the sense of they really don't care. They want to see what they can get away with. They're just like you know the whole night after 9/11. You know they keep testing the waters and see what's going to happen and see how this works and see how that works. For all we know, this group was put up by another larger organization to attempt to do this. They don't want to get their feet in the mud, so let's get this little group to see how they fare when they try and do it.
Good point. What about you, Mike?
Okay. So, first off, nowhere in the Constitution is there any mention of separation of church and state. There absolutely is not. And what it does say is that government cannot make or mandate a particular religion. It
Right,
doesn't say
there's
anything
no
about the
endorsement.
separation of church and state. Okay, and any laws that affect that type of stuff must equally apply to all religions and all people, not just religion in particular, but to all people. Okay, so a law saying that people will not be allowed to work on Sundays can't be instituted on a religious basis, but it can be instituted on a political basis. Okay. And if they tried to challenge that under a separation of church and state doctrine, it would fail. Okay. For the simple fact that, like I said, first off, the Constitution doesn't have anything about separation of church and state. It just says that government cannot establish religion or establish a particular religion to be practiced. No, it also doesn't say that. It also says that government can't compel people to practice a specific religion. Stand by.
Standing by.
I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's going to remind me I better turn my phone on mute too before somebody else calls me. Well, it's 9:51 on St. Patrick's Day. Nobody gives a damn enough about me to call at this point.
Yeah, I'm surprised I got a call that time of night.
Somebody just texted somebody.
Someone just left a message.
I will be right back. My girlfriend just had surgery, and I need to go help her.
Oh, absolutely.
Go.
Wanted to be okay.
Do your thing. We're still here. All right. So, we were talking a little bit just before we went on air. I was, you guys may know we have the YouTube channels, which maybe you guys are watching them on one of those channels right now.
Yeah.
The big thing now is YouTube Shorts.
Yeah. Can't
I guess it's been a big thing for a while. But like the baseball batter who only swings at fastballs, I am once again behind the curve. It turns out that the YouTube Shorts are now a big thing. So we've been trying to play catch up here at the Range Report by doing a series of small little vignettes that are either going to be informational or humorous or just outright stupid. And we had a little incident yesterday. It was kind of stupid. We were doing a little video on budget firearms, and because not everybody can afford to go out and buy $6, $7, $8, $900 guns, to defend themselves with, and sometimes you have to rely on a $150, $200, $300 gun. So we want to try and debut and share with people some of those less expensive guns because most of them work and work reliably and they do what they're supposed to do. Well, we showed 2 guns yesterday and then another couple of guns and another couple of guns. And while we were doing them, I said to myself, you know what I think we're going to do? Maybe we're going to do a series of short videos to show the proper maintenance and cleaning and lubrication of these guns, because being of the less expensive variety, they're probably going to be a little bit more temperamental. There are inexpensive guns work 2 ways. Either you have to baby the living hell out of them in order for them to work, or you can embed them in a block of concrete and they'll still work every time. Those are the only 2 ways that cheap guns work. So we said, all right, we're going to do a couple of takedown videos and show people, how they go about doing it. And while we were done filming one video yesterday, one of the guns malfunctioned a little, not during operation, but during a function check.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to put it in the vise and beat the hell out of it for a little while to get it to free up. And then looked at the gun, inspected it thoroughly, and I could not figure out what was wrong with it, why it did what it did. Couldn't figure it out. It was, plus it was late. Sorry, I'll get back to it tomorrow. But by the time I put it back together, it was working perfect. No problem. Function checks, great. Go out today. Corned beef is in the pot. Larry's doing the cooking thing. I got a little free time. I'm going to go out and shoot a couple short videos. No big deal. Take the gun out of the box. I can't move the slide. It's like somebody crazy glued the damn thing shut. And I tried for like 45 minutes. And I got some big burly hands, and I'm not exactly weak. So I'm trying. I can't get this thing going no matter what the hell I do. So I jump online, I jump on an email, I shoot an email off to the company rep, and I let them know that I was having a problem with the gun. And then I'm going to send you a video detailing the problem. I made a YouTube video on a private link. I uploaded that. It's St. Patty's Day. I understand they're probably not going to respond in between that. But I got to thinking about it. I was so disgusted by it. The fact that it wasn't even like it malfunctioned while I was shooting. It malfunctioned sitting in a box. Something went wrong with this gun sitting in a box. Something is not right here. And I tried figuring out what it was, and eventually I did figure it out this evening. But I got to thinking, for the people that can't afford to buy a $1,500 gun that they're going to carry with them all, every day, for the people that have to rely on something inexpensive, that friggin' thing better work flawlessly every single time you squeeze the trigger. Every time you function with that thing, it should work. It should work every single time. And I understand sometimes there's a problem with one particular gun. If it's maybe there's a crack nobody noticed, or there's a material malfunction, or something is wrong, whatever the case is. Could be operator error, could be 1,000 things that cause a gun not to work. But if it's not that, and if it's something that's inherently in the design of the gun, that shit's got to get corrected. Because people use these things, they don't just buy them because they want them. They buy them because they think, well, they know that there's a pretty good possibility that at some point they're going to have to rely on that thing to defend their life or the life of their family, the life of a loved one, even the life of a stranger. And that thing better function. I mentioned today, if you put a $5 light switch in your wall or a 99-cent light switch in your wall, people say, oh, well, you get what you pay for. All right, so maybe the $5 light switch, you'll get 10,000 flicks up and down before the switch goes bad. But then the switch just doesn't work. Maybe the 99 cents one, you only get 2,000 up and downs before it doesn't work. Then it doesn't work. Neither the $5 switch or the $5 switch or the 99-cent switch should be responsible in burning your house down. There's got to be a fail-safe in there. There's got to be a minimum standard to which things are built so that even if they don't function, they don't cause harm. Well, how do you cause unintended harm with a firearm? By having one that either blows up in your hand and hurts the person operating it, or one that doesn't work when it needs to. And what I discovered about an hour ago, hour and a half ago now, before we went live, was I believe I found a flaw in the design, and it's a very significant one that may only occur under very unique circumstances, but not in uncommon enough circumstances where you could say it's within acceptable margins. It's not. It's not, because how it malfunctioned yesterday for the first time was the unintended malfunction. But it was functioning perfectly when I put it in the box. Now, when I took it out of the box, it didn't function at all. That's a problem. And after doing some research and looking, and then I kind of looked and I said, okay, why would it do that? When I replicated the conditions that caused the original malfunction, I said to myself, my God, this is bad. This is something very bad. Because what I did under normal circumstances could very easily happen in an emergency situation. And since guns are not really tested, the people who do the testing on guns are not in the middle of a confrontation when they're doing it. They're not in the middle of fighting for their life. They're not in the middle of having somebody on top of them, hitting them, swinging at them, trying to grab a gun out of their hand or trying to do anything else, because you can't test a gun like that. What they do is they bring it to the range. They run a certain amount of rounds through it under optimum conditions. Then it's approved and it goes to the public. The conditions I was working this thing in were less than optimum, but not unrealistic and not uncommon. And I had a significant issue with this firearm, and now it's going to be up to them I'm going to have to replicate it again on camera and send them the firearm and show them exactly what it was, because I think I may have found a significant flaw, and I really hope to God that doesn't. If it's not a flaw, tell me. Maybe I did something over and above. I don't know, but if it is a flaw, there's a lot of these things out there.
It's important that what you're doing is important, and the sad thing is, we've got, as we were talking about before, that's not part of the approved message. It should be. It's public safety. It's a public concern. So that's one of the reasons why we have things like television and the social media, is to make the public aware of concerns like this. But it's not an approved message. And so now you're going to see that when you try and tell the public, it's suppressed. Meanwhile, they're trying to push the latest executive orders by Joe Biden, which is counterproductive to public safety. And I want to talk about Biden's thing in a second.
But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. But I just wanted to go back. I was saying, I'm shooting this video with this firearm.
Yeah.
And the conditions in which this malfunction was created are not uncommon. It's not an uncommon condition, and you could theorize how it could 100 different real world scenarios where this could have been replicated and could result in exactly the same kind of malfunction, exactly the same kind of thing. I'm going to contrast that by a manufacturer I visited a couple of weeks ago who had a complaint from an FFL about part of their gun that was not right. And they created a video to show a part of how that gun malfunctioned. But the conditions under which that gun malfunctioned were not only nearly impossible for us to replicate while I was at that manufacturer, they would most certainly never occur in real world circumstances.
Mhm.
I mean, it would be like, okay, well, if I tell you don't fall into a volcano, okay, well, I know how not to fall into a volcano. Stay away from a friggin' volcano. But if I put you on top of a teeter-totter board and then on top of a beach ball and I blindfold you and have you stand on top of it and throw shit at you, trying to knock you off while telling you don't fall into the volcano, you know what's probably going to happen? You're probably going to fall into the volcano. When you create something so utterly unworldly to try and say, look, it malfunctioned, it didn't go the way it was supposed to. Well, when you rig the game 1,000 ways for it not to, oh, my gun didn't go off. Well, you welded the barrel shut. Of course, it's not going to go off. Oh, my car doesn't go into reverse. Of course not. It's backed up against the wall. Whatever the thing is, if you make an unrealistic set of circumstances and try to justify it by saying, well, look, it doesn't work under this circumstance, under this circumstance. Yes, I know. A snorkel doesn't work when you're 40 feet underwater. It's not how it works. It's supposed to be at the surface. That's where it works. Then it's one thing. This something different. I'm just hoping. I'm hoping to God that this was a one-off issue and not something that, because I really do like this gun company. Not only the company, but I like the people that run the gun company.
Mhm.
I like the company that it for what they stand for, what they represent, for what they try to provide to the consumer. There's not enough gun companies that do it. I appreciate their stance. They do make from everything I've had. I got a bunch of them, quality firearms. I'm just hoping this is a one-time thing and not something that I have to do a complete hey, whatever you do, don't buy one of these things videos. If I do, I do. But I pray for the company's sake that this was a one-off situation, because otherwise this is gonna be a very expensive thing for them to fix.
Well, it's good to keep them honest. God forbid it was some bean counter that said, oh, let's cut a corner. Better to catch that early and protect more people.
Well, that's the thing. I'm just hoping that. I mean, listen, if what I think happened, and I can verify that what happened, the fix for it would be of minimal expense. I mean, per individual item.
Right.
I have absolutely no idea how many of these individual items would be effective if it's systemic, and I would just hope that it's enough profit margin built into the gun to accommodate for this necessary repair.
This will be something else they can use now. It'll be, oh, see, all guns are bad. Look at this one.
The King of Sanity on YouTube says that his neighbor keeps exposing himself to my gun. Wait a second. Is that my neighbor? No,
What?
sorry. No, somebody on YouTube just said my neighbor
Yeah,
keeps
see.
exposing himself to my garden gnome. And I'm wondering if that's the guy who lives next door. Well,
Hey,
why are
it's
you
Friday
watching
night.
Like, contact the police. The answer to that is contact the police, not tell us on YouTube. I don't know what they're
Well, if his
expecting.
neighbor's exposing himself to his garden gnome, I mean, hey, picture it didn't happen.
We all have our kinks, okay? It's the weekend.
See, when the neighbor starts exposing herself to the garden gnome.
Well, if it's a her,
Well, that's what I'm saying, because he says it's himself. Maybe it's her. Well, excuse me, but how dare you assume your neighbor's gender?
Yeah, I'll do that. That's okay. I have preferences.
Oh boy. Anyway, so executive orders and drones.
Oh, he's got me so pissed about the executive order. Pete, did you read what he did?
No, I was too busy reading about Putin getting those.
Knocking down the plane.
Oh no, there's an arrest warrant out for Putin for war
Yeah,
crimes.
the
Oh yeah, the
International
ICC. Yeah.
International Tribunal.
I just laughed at that.
That's never gonna happen.
Yeah. Look,
That's just
no,
dumb media.
what's Biden's latest executive order?
Okay, let me
It'll
show.
make me scream. Not the WHO thing, right? That was last week.
No, this is a new stupid thing. It's so dumb. Okay, you see it there, Frank?
Yeah, you want to throw that in there?
Yeah. Okay, so everyone knows this is from the White House. I'm not getting it from any biased media, and it's not like I made it up. This is from the White House. And looking at this is just blah, blah, crap. He's great. This is wonderful, blah, blah. That means nothing. This is the executive order right here. And it says, so the first one is increased background checks. Fantastic. We already have background checks. The problem isn't the background check, is that we don't do enough background checks as is. And when there is a problem with the background check, there is no follow-up by the federal government more often than not. There is an immense backlog on flags in the background checks that never get any action taken on. And we have seen that happen with several people who've committed mass shootings over the last several decades. This is not a new problem, and the only solution is we need more enforcement. That's not happening. So saying that we're going to make more background checks and harder background checks does not resolve any part of the problem. So this is useless. The first part, completely useless. Going on to the second thing. And this is the one that has gotten me absolutely livid. So let me skip to the third thing. Address the loss of firearms during shipping. Yet again, this is an enforcement issue, not a prevention issue. This is about taking action when the government is notified. It has nothing to do with making you safe. The first one and the second one, first and third, do not make you safe. This is about enforcement, which has always been lacking, so it doesn't help you. They want to hold the gun industry responsible, which you can't. It's not the gun industry's fault, just like it's not the car maker's fault that Darrell Brooks ran over people in a parade. It's not liable. And what's also of interest is that the Department of Defense is going to be buying up more of the guns that are available for the public. That's this section right here. That the Department of Defense buys a large number of firearms and other weapons to protect and serve our country. The president is directing the Secretary of Defense to develop and implement principles to further firearm and public safety practices through the Department of Defense acquisition of firearms consistent with applicable law. They're going to buy up a bunch of the guns that are available for the public. That's what that says. The DOD is going to go out and buy a bunch of guns. So that's the big thing. The last thing is right here, and it's this one. Accelerate and intensify the bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Everyone forgot about this. This was passed under the Democrats last year. It is paying what this does, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. All it does is pay states to enact red flag laws and to enforce red flag laws. They literally get paid, and we saw Illinois did this on purpose. The federal government will pay a state to get a red flag law if they don't have one, and then they will pay each and every state that has red flag laws for the number of people that have a red flag action that they take away your guns forcibly without committing a crime. That's what the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act does. Keeping that in mind, that's what it does. And he wants to intensify, in other words, give states an incentive to take away the guns of citizens and put them on the list for a year or several years, denying them the right to own a firearm. He's going to do that at the same time, coming back to the second point right here, improve public awareness and increase appropriate use of extreme risk protection orders, otherwise known as red flags, and the safe storage of firearms. Okay. Safe storage, no one knows if you have safe storage of a gun unless the government is in your house. The only way they can confirm safe storage is after the fact of something happening. If they're going to improve awareness and the appropriate use of safe storage laws, then the government has to come into your house, violate your privacy, the Fourth Amendment. They have to completely invalidate that to go in to see how you're storing your firearms. That's a problem. The second thing is red flag laws don't work. 19 states in the District of Columbia have had red flag laws since 1999. Have there been any mass shootings since 1999? Have there been any school shootings since 1999? Have there been any violent use of firearms since 1999 in these 19 states and Washington, D.C., when from the moment they've had these red flag laws going forward? Has any of that happened? If the answer is yes, red flag laws don't.
I think YouTube found out that he's saying things that they don't like.
They are useless.
Yes, I think so too. Nah, but I mean, look,
Oh, here I am.
there you go.
Did you lose me or did I lose you guys?
I think we lost you.
Okay. So where did you leave me at? I was saying the red flag laws have never
They
worked.
don't work.
They have never worked. They are not designed to work. They are mostly meant to stop suicide. That's according to all the studies that have been done on them. They don't even do that.
Well, well, listen, they're not designed for that either.
No. And
They're
we've
not
seen
designed for that either. They're meant to chill gun ownership.
that's all this is. And he
it's
is
meant
saying
to
right
clog
now,
up the court, clog up the system. It's meant to destroy the Second Amendment. It has nothing to do. Oh, we're gonna with this aimed at suicide. As long as anybody in this friggin' country's got a medicine cabinet or a toaster or a bathtub or or access to something higher than 25 feet tall, they have access to suicide. You don't need anything for suicide other than commitment.
yes,
That's all you need is commitment. That has nothing to do.
right. But do you see what's so evil about this? Do you guys see what's so evil? He's on one hand saying the states, he's going to increase the amount of red flag laws at the same time that he is telling the states that they're going to get paid more to put people on red flag lists. This isn't about making, and we know for a fact that the red flag laws have not worked ever. They have never stopped violent crime. They have never stopped criminals or the deranged. And yet he's going to increase that and pay the government to put people on these lists without breaking a law. This is evil, what he has done. It is destroying the Second Amendment, and it's pissing me off. And I've seen, and by the way, I know King of Sanity saying red flag laws work. I've looked at every study since 1999. I have spoken to the state of Connecticut, Indiana, and New York State directly. I have published documents on this and submitted them both to New York State and to the public. They have never worked, ever. That is a
King
fact.
of Sanity. Please document where you've seen studies that red flag
Michael,
laws
don't
have actually prevented a mass shooting
Michael,
or any
don't feed the
shooting,
troll.
and
It's a troll.
for that
It just
instance.
means
Michael, he's a troll.
Please indicate where you're getting your information from, because if you say that they work, then you must be getting that information from someplace, and we would like to know.
He's getting it. Michael, he's getting it out of his ass. He's a troll. Don't even bother interacting with him.
Well,
I have a suggestion for the King of Sanity. How about you pass on your email address? We'll send you the link, and you can come show your face.
oh, really? What's the title? The book's called "Red Flag Laws Preventing a Mass Shooting." Where can we get that at, King of Sanity? Is that on Amazon?
Let's have an opposing view on here. Come on, King of Sanity, give us your email address. So
no
we
such
can
book
invite you.
exists. No such book exists. Just did a search. Matter of fact,
Listen, don't waste your time with him.
I know.
Don't
I
waste
know.
your time with him. Don't engage with him. He's
No,
No, but I
we,
just want-
we are open to opposing viewpoints.
we're an open forum. We're open to people who want to come in and have a logical discussion with us.
Okay, and
even
I'm
if it's
giving him a
counter-argument.
chance.
But I'm not
to
going to. I
defend
don't want
his
to feed a
position.
troll. I don't want to feed a
Okay,
troll.
regardless of
It's
whether
that
he's
time
troll
for
or
me not
not, he can't say that we did not give him a chance.
Well, the offer is there. If he wants to put his email there and he wants to man up and show his face on camera, he can come up and discuss it. But I'm not going to discuss anything with somebody who's only going to sit there in the comment section because they don't have the balls enough to go on camera.
There is no such organization. And by the way, so just to make it very clear, and I'm just completely debunking him, and I want to show everyone, because it's not just us saying so. If you can show the screen, just to make sure everyone understands, there is no such publishing company as he said, and no such book by the title he's provided exists. This is a troll. This is how you debunk someone. When people say, I don't know what's the truth, real easy. He cited a source, we checked it out. The source doesn't exist, the document doesn't exist. This is a troll. There's nothing else to be said about it.
All right, so
It's that simple.
So now that we're done dancing with the King of Sanity, let's get back to our
Just
insanity.
be saying so. Okay. Provide us with a link, King of Sanity. Provide us with a link to your book.
Well, I've dealt with trolls like this before, and the easiest thing is he's debunked. He's lost all credibility with me. Neither the publisher nor the book exists, so I'm done with that. Let's talk about Biden's executive order. Again, the red flags don't exist, and he is telling states, he's incentivizing the states to punish American citizens that have never broken a law. And at the end of the day, there is no benefit, as documented since 1999, there is no benefit to the public by doing this. That's why I'm pissed off about it. What about you guys? Now that you see that, what do you guys think?
And plain and simply, okay, and we've talked about this before many times. The red flag laws essentially violate the entirety, with the exception of the third Amendment, the entirety of the Bill of Rights.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
You go to
And we've gone through this, okay, and I've gone in detail exactly where it violates the First Amendment, where it violates the Second Amendment, where it violates Fourth, the Fifth, the Sixth, the Seventh, the Eighth, the Ninth, and the 10th Amendments.
Oh yeah, and the 14th, 15th, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
we've already had
Okay,
several.
well,
thoughts
14th,
on
15th are not in the Bill of Rights.
No,
Okay,
no,
but
not
yes,
Bill of
it
Rights,
does
but-
violate the 14th, 15th Amendment as well.
Mhm.
Okay, and it could even be seen to violate. Let me look at something real quick.
You were going to say something, Frank, or you, Pete?
I was saying we've already had numerous courts across the country already rule and hold up the fact that the red flag laws are unconstitutional. So they're working their way through the court now anyway, and it's only going to be a matter of time before the Supreme Court comes out and acknowledges the fact that they're unconstitutional. So the fact that this moron would go out there issuing an executive order, which by the way is not law, is not law. And since it hasn't gone through the proper channels of Congress, so that the people have informed consent, and it wasn't voted on, and it can't be enforced. It is utterly meaningless for him to come out and even issue this executive order. Knowing all of that on the face just shows you that it's either he's completely out of touch, or he's completely out of touch. Either way, there's no sense in him even issuing it, except for the fact that he can't get his I'm gonna ban assault weapons hell or high water in my first term. He can't do it. He can't do it, and this is just another way to placate the base so he can turn around and say that the Republicans are obstructionists. That's why he couldn't get it done, and that now they have the House and everything. No, Joe, listen, the only thing obstructing your agenda is the Constitution. And of course, we the people.
You know? Okay.
So,
and here's the thing.
Put all the orders you want. They mean shit.
The Senate used to have a committee that reviewed every law to determine whether or not it was constitutional. And it used to be that somebody could raise a question of constitutionality in the House. And then the merits of whether a certain bill was constitutional or not had to be debated upon the floor of the House. That is no longer done. Okay. We are supposed to, according to the powers on high, assume that every law is constitutional until it is defeated by the courts. No, that's not the way this works. Okay. First things first, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Anything that is repugnant to the Constitution is unlawful, plain and simple. So if you have a law that is repugnant to the Constitution, it is unenforceable. And as such, it needs to be disregarded by the people of the United States. It needs to be disregarded by law enforcement. It needs to be disregarded by legislatures. I mean, across the board, it needs to be disregarded. And anybody working to enforce such laws unlawfully are in violation of their oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. That is the paramount oath of anybody holding any type of office, public office, is that the first thing is that they must uphold the Constitution of the United States. Next, they say, and the state where they reside, and then the laws thereof. Well, if a law violates either the state constitution or the federal constitution, the U.S. Constitution, then you are in violation of your oath by enforcing said law. Okay, because first off, it's unlawful. It's illegal. Plain and simple. But now, first go, we have a lot of laws in the state of New York that are outright offensive to the Constitution of the United States in regards of firearms. And that being said, the Civil Rights Code for the state of New York has in it, under Article 2, Section 4, the verbatim, the Second Amendment as written in the Constitution with one word change. And instead of shall not be infringed, it says cannot be infringed. So that means that government cannot take any action which subdues the rights of any individual to keep and bear arms. And the state legislature and the governor of the state, along with the state police and other law enforcement agents across the states of New York, are in constant violation of this section of New York Civil Rights Code.
Yeah, they know that they're breaking the law, but here's the thing: they know it's unconstitutional. They know they keep breaking these laws, but here's the problem that we're seeing now, and it's really, really terrifying. Frank, will you put this up? So, for people to know, this is from MSNBC. Okay, this is an opinion piece that Biden should. This is how he should respond to law enforcement. They are now advocating. MSNBC, supposed to be news, are advocating for the government to force law enforcement at local levels, sheriffs who do not want to follow this, who do not believe this is constitutional, and the public they serve do not believe it's constitutional, and they want this government to override local government and force this on you. This is by Frank Figliuzzi, an MSNBC columnist. And the most important thing to understand about this gentleman, according to MSNBC, he is a columnist, national security contributor who worked in counterintelligence for the FBI for 25 years. This is the government moving into news media to control the public and to advocate for unconstitutional action. And I guarantee you, most people who will see this will never know that NBC is, first of all, not being a news agency. They're now being a political advocate for something that is unconstitutional.
Propagandist.
That it's propagandist. It doesn't work. And it's being done by agents of or someone who I have great question about his credibility when we see he's worked for the FBI for 25 years and he's supporting an unconstitutional action that has never worked to the benefit of the public.
Now,
now that he's working for MSNBC.
I want to see what justification they have on how to force these sheriffs to enforce these laws.
We need the Justice Department to use its power of the purse and offer incentives for local, county, and state agencies to abide by their state's red flag laws. Just as importantly, disincentivize when they don't. They're going to remove state funds, federal funds for states if they do not comply. This also works in conjunction, as I just showed you, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, where they are incentivizing states to put people on the red flags list. This is what they are recommending. They're buying off the states.
Now, here's the thing, okay? That in and of itself is a complete disregard of the Constitution.
Yep.
The Constitution is to provide funding. If it provides funding to states, it is to provide funding to those states equally based upon based upon population. That doesn't mean that you can pick and choose which states get money. Okay, plain and simple. You can't pick and choose. If they choose to disregard a federal law, which they deem to be unconstitutional, you cannot force them to enforce that unconstitutional law by withholding funding from them. You can also not send funds to specific states just because they are enforcing an unconstitutional law. That is a complete disregard of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Okay, which states, okay, it's Article 1, Section 1, or Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution. And I will read it verbatim. Give me just a second. Okay. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts, and to provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Okay. When we talk about common defense and general welfare, a lot of people try to use this general welfare to mean something that it doesn't. To provide for general welfare means that if Congress chooses to submit funding to states for whatever purpose, that funding must be equal for all the states. That is general welfare. Okay. It means every state is treated equally. Every state is treated as a general whole. You can't exclude specific states because they choose not to abide by a certain regulation that was passed. You can't exclude states because they don't have your political viewpoints. The helmet laws across the United States, where the federal government incentivized states to pass helmet laws, is unconstitutional. Seatbelt laws, where the federal government incentivized states to enact seatbelt laws or they would lose highway funding, is illegal. Okay, it's unconstitutional. The Back when the speed limit, the highest national speed limit was 55. Again, that was a law that was instituted by the federal government. Well, it was instituted by the states per federal government funding guidelines. And if states didn't implement a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit law, then they'd lose highway money. These are all in direct violation of the General Welfare Clause. Okay, the General Welfare Clause is not about keeping people safe. Okay, or to provide for the welfare of individuals. The General Welfare Clause means that government is to act in the best interest of everyone, not specific individuals. And when they fail to do that, they are in direct violation of the General Welfare Clause. These are the things that we need to understand when these politicians say, well, we're abiding by the General Welfare Clause. No, you're not. Okay. Anything that promotes one group over another is not general welfare. Anything that punishes noncompliance and unequally is not for the good of the general welfare. I don't know how else to say it. Okay, general welfare means for the welfare of all, not for the welfare of some. And when you use funds to incentivize enforcement of unconstitutional laws, that in and of itself is a violation. Okay, first off, you're violating the Constitution by trying to get these states to enforce unconstitutional laws. And secondly, you're in violation of the power of the purse. Okay, you are usurping power that you do not have. You were not granted that power by the people.
It's just crazy. It's crazy that they're going through all this. Pete, you didn't know about any of this. As you mentioned, you had not seen the executive order. You didn't know what it said or what Biden was doing. Now, I just showed you that. I just showed you what MSNBC is doing, which I find to be at best questionable, if not totally propagandist. That's my opinion. But what do you think about? And you heard Mike going through the reasons, additional reasons why it's unconstitutional, besides my thoughts of why it's invalid. What do you think now? What was that? How do you feel about it?
Obviously, once again, not to just keep repeating, yes, of course, it's unconstitutional. My question behind the whole thing, I did see the MSNBC is definitely a fun read. It's good for jokes in the afternoon when I'm working here. But I think the whole thing at this point is more of a look what I'm doing up here. Don't look what I'm doing down here. Because this is one, it's unconstitutional. Two, it's never going to work. Three, at best, it's going to employ more government employees to do mindless paperwork that is not going to accomplish anything, make people safer. It is just, once again, more open, empty, false promises by the government of, making people feel safe. But I also think that these nonsensical orders that accomplish nothing and just employ more government staffers is a ruse to, once again, don't look at what's going on over here. Oh, look at this. Look at the big sign. Blink, 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 blink. We're going to get the gun guys. We're not going to get the gun guys with this. We're not going to do anything more except to hurt the law-abiding gun owner by doing any of this. This is a distraction because the other parts of MSNBC today, where they're now starting to look into Hunter more, and they're starting to look into the finances more, and now it's also Biden's daughter-in-law that they're looking into where she got money from. And I think that you're going to start seeing a lot more silly, stupid executive orders coming out the closer and closer they get to the Biden family purse strings.
That's an interesting outlook. Frank, you got quiet.
Just try to wrap my head around all of this stuff and realize there ain't nearly enough surface area in my head to wrap it around everything. It's like, again, it's ridiculous. Why, and Peter's on the right track here with this thing. I mean, the more things that come up, the more things that we know, the more of a distraction they're going to have to make. It's always going to be. It's this week's China balloon. Yeah, it's the China balloon of this week. That's what it is. It's it's another detraction from train derailments, another distraction from finances, another distraction from all. It's another distraction from the fact that the administration is out there saying that they're now going to start shooting down Russian planes. That you have the military is now saying we're going to shoot down Russian planes, because one of our drones got crop dusted over the Black Sea, and Russia first, they denied. Well, who said Russia denied it? The American press said Russia denied it. So did Russia deny it? I don't know. Because why? Because the American press said they did. So I don't know whether they did or they didn't, because I don't trust the American press to tell me the truth as to whether or not they denied it. We saw the footage of it. We saw the footage of it getting crop dusted with some unspent fuel out of a Cold War era MiG fighter. So it's nice to know that they're sending the antique relic airplanes up there to take care of our spy drones. Rather than their new MiGs.
It's scary when you got to go to the BBC to get the facts on what's going on here in the United States.
Yeah. A lot.
We talked about that last week. How we get more accurate information from foreign news sources than we do from our own.
More often than not, amazingly, consistently. But when I put it all together and I'm looking at this, it's so aggravating because everything except Biden's actual statement, the actual executive order. I found the rest of it in 5 minutes. I did live with you guys. I was typing to pull up the additional sources with you guys live.
Mhm.
And the thing is, if I can do that in 5 minutes with you
Mhm.
guys live, including finding MSNBC and finding out that their commentator, their reporter, being backed by MSNBC, is an FBI guy for 25 years, and say, okay, this seems to be biased. If I can do that in 5 minutes live, why aren't other people doing it? That's the problem. Ultimately, is they're getting away with this stuff because people aren't going, well, wait a minute, I have questions. And this doesn't make sense. It's not constitutional. Why are we doing this?
Well, what? Why even ask questions? You see what that Jean Pierre does in the White House press room.
Mm.
You ask a question, she walks out. Ask a question, we'll circle back. Ask a question, I already answered that. When? Yesterday, after I walked out. There is not a single truth told from that press office podium except the fact that she's a black lesbian. That's all. That's the only thing that and I'm only going to assume that that's true because she keeps making it a point to tell us every opportunity that she gets that there is, she's a first. She's a first. Not that she's qualified, but she's the first.
Yeah.
Not that anybody who's in the administration is qualified, but they're the firsts. So we have a whole bunch of firsts. That's the only thing that we know for a fact, from the White House press secretary. Do we get any questions from the White House press corps? Pertinent, pressing questions? Yeah. When are the questions asked? On the lawn after the press conference is already over because they never get called on while they're in the press room. The only people who ask the right questions are the people who nobody ever calls on. And Steve Ducey.
Yeah.
Ducey, is that the kid's name or is that the
Yeah,
father's name?
that's
I don't know.
That's the son. The father is on Fox.
Yeah, Ducey, Junior Ducey.
Mhm.
Junior Ducey, who seems to be much better at his job than his dad is.
Oh yeah.
He's that kid is fearless. Good for him. I'm glad he's asking the questions. But he's the only one who's actually asking the questions. And we have there's one reporter that I think it's in there from the Epoch Times. It's Epic Times or Epoch. I'm not sure.
I think they pronounce it Epoch. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how he gets a question in every now and then, but very, 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 very seldom does anybody actually respond to anything he does. And there's one guy from an African news source that's currently suing the administration and the White House press corps because they're deliberately trying to pull his press credentials because they don't like the questions that he asks. He's the only guy that's actually not only asks the questions, but tells you what the answers mean when he gets them.
Mm.
Well, he deciphers the answers that other reporters get and then don't ask a follow-up. He reads it between the lines for everybody so that they can better understand. But like I said, getting back to that article with MSNBC, that guy who was an FBI guy for 25 years, didn't we just learn through the Twitter files how many people from the FBI, former FBI agents, were employed at Twitter by the hundreds?
Yeah.
Well,
Hundreds
not only FBI, we have intelligence officials.
well, I'm just talking about the FBI because it relates to this guy. Was this guy also at one point or another employed by Twitter?
Could have been.
So because right off the bat, that's now you have the definite link that you could show of ideology between who they hire.
It troubles me, and I think it should trouble us all that his qualifications are, yeah, I've been in the FBI, counterintelligence. What does counterintelligence do?
Why?
They disinform. They push out misinformation. They promote a political agenda, and they attack people who don't have the correct political viewpoint. They are there for the mere purpose of pushing an agenda.
Deceit.
That's what he did. And he's working for MSNBC. I have questions.
Oh, that reporter from Africa is Simon Atiba, Ateba. He's the chief White House correspondent from Today's News Africa.
Okay, I don't know
And
them.
oh, dude, followed him. Followed him. They put out the straight skinny. You know
Okay.
why? Because he's reporting on the world, because everything that happens in the world, one way or another, affects Africa a
Yeah.
lot worse than it affects everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, they get hit with the shit faster than everybody else does. So he's trying to find out what's gonna happen to my continent. Because of the lies that you told you, because the rest of the world doesn't care about Africa.
True.
He does. He does. So when he tells you something's about to happen to his people, the people of his nation, his continent, pay attention to it, because it rolls downhill and it rolls pretty fast. And these guys get hit with most of it. Nobody cares about Africa. Nobody cares about Africa. We know the big tech don't care about Africa. The only time that they could ever care about Africa is when it's time to exploit it.
Yeah.
When are we pulling stuff out of the ground?
Yeah, and that's another form of exploitation. If there's a concert they can do to raise money, to raise awareness about the concert they're raising awareness about, to do the concert to raise awareness, then they'll use Africa in the title. Not feeding nobody, but you're raising awareness about the concert. Or they're raping the land and pillaging the people. Or pillaging the people and
I'll
raping the
touch
land.
on a few things. Okay. Kind of shift gears here a little bit. We started talking a little bit about 15-minute cities last week. Okay, 15-minute urban areas.
Yeah.
And we got into pretty good discussion on them. And one of the key factors on a lot of these 15-minute cities is the fact that capital is not going to be instrumental in them. Basically, everything you need is provided for you.
Mhm.
I want to look at some of the things that have been happening over the past week, or actually past couple of weeks. Namely, the Silicon Bank failure,
Mhm.
followed by the Signature Bank failure,
Mhm.
that were both shut down by the federal government due to a run being
Mhm.
implemented on them. Okay, and them having the actual capital to be able to support everybody withdrawing their money there.
Mhm.
Okay, this isn't just happening here in the United States.
Credit Suisse.
This is happening globally.
Mhm.
Okay, there are banks being shut down all across the world right now because of various instances of what happened to Silicon Valley Bank and also what happened to Signature Bank. And these banks are failing. We're also seeing huge losses in some of the biggest banks in the world: Wells Fargo, Citibank, and several others. Okay, here is something that I've been pushing over the last few years, 3-4 years now, that they were going to institute something to cause a collapse in global currency. One of the easiest ways to cause global currency to collapse is to collapse the banks.
True.
You get the banks to fail, guess what? There is no currencies. Okay? Once you eliminate currency, then the only thing you have left is social. And you start going with ESG. So if you eliminate currency, guess what? You don't have powerful corporations like Facebook, Amazon, UPS, Norfolk Southern. Um, you don't have billionaires like Elon Musk, uh, Bezos, and many others. So all of a sudden, everybody's on a quote unquote equal footing because everybody is rated upon how well they interact with the environment, government, and socially.
Scary.
Okay. This has been a big thing that the World Economic Forum has been pushing for quite a few years now. And it is something that is starting to look a lot more plausible, especially with these recent bank failures and these recent um, losses in many huge banks. Okay. I mean, I'm not talking just little losses, I'm talking billions of dollars in losses in some of these banks. And like I said, is this a precursor to the collapse of the currency based economic system? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think we're a long way off from collapse of uh, an economic banking system. Yeah, you're going to have bank runs. I mean, even later in the week where you had First Republic, where they went, and then all of the other banks came in and bailed them out. Did you see that one after Signature and SVB? There's still, this is also a case for one of my pet projects or one of my favorite things, which I believe all three of you are pretty much against, cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm. I'm against it. Yeah, I don't.
You're against it? Oh no, see,
Yeah.
I'm a big for it because the big thing with cryptocurrency is it is decentralized. There is no bank. There is no anything. You can't bank run something that is worldwide. And I mean, this is just a very, very basic statement on it, but you know,
I get that when you talk about crypto, and I know governments are now trying to go to crypto, and there's a lot to it. The one thing I don't like about crypto is essentially, best as I can understand it, there's no net asset. At the end of the day, there's no value. The value is always implied. The value exists because we say it exists. And we've seen throughout all the crypto over the last 3 years, a massive downturn with significant cryptocurrencies completely failing, because at the end of the day, once you lose that implied value, there's no absolute value to be determined that people can then say, okay, well, here's its base, here's what it's actually worth, and that will support it by itself. So that's why that's the one thing I have against crypto. But it seems like we're seeing more and more of, like Mike's saying, we're seeing more of the banks in trouble. The cycle is escalating because underneath all those banks, the currency, as an example, in the United States, we have $150 trillion of unfunded liabilities, and we are printing more money, 6.8 billion for this round of the budget. We're estimating, according to the CBO, we could be spending as much as 7 trillion, 9 trillion on budgets per year in the next 5 years. That's going to be going at $2 to $3 trillion a year. It's unsustainable. And even if the banks are trying to float it, it's unsustainable. And you're going to see more and more of the things like with SVB, where they're chasing the ESG, they're chasing diversity, they're funding all that which has no sustainability. Therefore, they fail. The other banks try to buoy them so that they all don't collapse one after the other,
Right.
which helps to further the collapse because, again, there's nothing. The same problem for crypto is the same problem we're talking about. There's nothing underlying.
Right.
And
There's
so-
never anything underlying.
Right. And so it all fails, which, yeah, Mike, it brings us to a social credit score, an ESG kind of environment. I find that terrifying. I don't know what the answer is, but my fear, maybe you can answer this, Pete, is if we go with crypto, that only accelerates it to me, not
I
prevents.
think, yeah, I think crypto can actually be an accelerant towards going to a currency-less economy.
You see my fear?
Crypto is complex. It's a
Yes.
lot way beyond the 2 minutes left we have tonight. But there are, just like anything else in this world, there are good and there are bad. There are long established cryptocurrencies. There are cryptocurrencies that were started yesterday by my neighbor.
Try to live, and we try to give each other what we need to survive. Sorry. Anytime somebody says good and bad, I break out into Ebony and Ivory. It's one of my favorite songs.
I figured I'd let you go. Maybe we join in a little bit too, but we could have the crypto discussion at another point.
Well, just for example, okay, Bitcoin was not that long ago trading for well over $50,000 of Bitcoin.
Correct.
Its value is now below 20,000.
27,294.
Okay, well, this is as of March 10th.
It is as of right now.
All right. Listen, I'm not a stock market guy, although I used to work commodity finance division on Wall Street. I was a bigwig for a while.
Used to juggle.
Until I got hit by a car outside the job one day. I went through the windshield. That was a rough day.
Driving home was fun.
Yeah. Anyway, like I said, I'm not a stock market guy. I'm not a financial guy. I'm a prepper, for lack of a better words. I'm just trying to prepare myself, my life, my family for bad things that eventually will happen. And I can tell you that if we ever get hit with an EMP, your crypto is worth absolutely zero.
So is your dollar.
So exactly.
Good point.
So is the dollar. Because both of them are built on promises and nothing more. There's no tangible asset behind these things. Prior to, what was it, 1972, when we came off the gold standard, the US dollar was at least backed by gold. But you want to know what's going to happen when the crash and the economy eventually collapses and we have all these upheavals and uprisals and everything else. Gold, that everybody says, invest in gold. It's a hedge against inflation. It's a hedge against turmoil. It's a hedge against it. Okay. When you're investing in gold, if you're not in physical possession of the gold that you invested in when everything collapses and all you have is a receipt for the gold, the commodity exchange receipt that has a pretty serial number on it and tells you how many ounces of gold you got, it's worth dick.
Right.
It's worth dick because unless it's in your hand, it's meaningless. Somebody else possesses that gold, and possession is 9/10 of the law. So when these receipts, COMEX receipts, are worth nothing because they can no longer substantiate or validate the receipt because the electronic system that keeps records of all of that collapses, you also have no gold. So I say, get your gold in hand. Put it in your hand. Put it in your safe. But the best thing to do with your gold is to take your gold to a place that sells brass and lead and exchange it for these. And the reason I say that is because of this. Take your gold, take your investment, at least 10%. Everybody, this should go across the board. 10% of your complete investment that you have in your portfolio, if you could extract it without being penalized, invest in things that will be necessary to trade with other people if the system should happen to collapse, because these will retain value far longer than gold will, because you can't heat your home with gold. You can't feed yourself with gold. You can't eat it. You can't feed your livestock with it. You can't cool your home with it. You can't drink it. You can't keep your food safe with it. You can't do a damned thing with gold. Gold has as much value in an economic collapse as
Yeah. No, I think Frank dropped out now.
Yeah, we broke Facebook again.
Yeah, they don't like what we're saying.
Things they don't like. Ooh,
No.
you're speaking too much truth. You gotta go.
Yeah.
You gotta
Yep.
go now.
They got me first, and now they're after Frank.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Okay. We are coming to a time where we as individuals need to determine, do we want to be controlled by a bunch of oligarchs that are global, controlling the whole world, or do we want to be in control of ourselves? And quite frankly, they keep pushing for this ESG. They're pushing for these 15-minute cities. They're pushing for this social credit, ESG scoring system. People don't understand. That's not to control individuals. It's to control nations. There is
Nation?
going to be a set group of people. Okay. And when a nation steps out of line,
You guys hear me?
they are going to be penalized. This is kind of interesting.
He's over there. He's over there. He's
Yeah,
over
but
there.
we don't
He's
have,
over there.
we have no audio.
I have two cameras.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So apparently the powers that be don't like me telling everybody to buy these instead of the other thing. They don't like me telling you the facts about gold and silver and all the rest of that, because that was a ridiculous friggin' hiccup right there.
Yeah.
All right. So, but I'm going to keep saying it because it needs to be heard. 10% of your total investment, buy things that you can trade in an economic collapse. Even if they're things that you don't necessarily need for yourself, take stock of what your neighbors need, take stock of what your friends need, and buy the stuff that they need that they might not be preparing to buy right now, because in an economic collapse, you'll be able to trade those items for things that you need, because things will, all right, and lead and copper will always have tangible value. Buy them, store them, keep them dry, keep them, without getting overheated. Make sure that they maintain proper climate control. Do the best you can. Leave them in the factory casing and the ammo cans. Leave them alone. Buy stuff. Buy that kind of stuff, because when you're hunting, unless you plan on taking a block of gold and beating the deer to death with it, it's useless. Okay. And when everybody else is starving, and when you're starving and you need to buy something from someone in your community, and then they say, what do you have to trade? and you say, I got my grandpappy's old gold ring. What do you give me for that? Not a damn thing. That's what they'll give you for it, because it's just as worthless to the next guy as it is to you. Buy things that are tangible assets that you can trade. If you don't have a skill and you don't have something that you can barter as far as laborious efforts, have things on hand that you can trade. Ammunition doesn't take up a lot of space. Well, unless you're me, then it takes up like huge amounts of space. But because that's just me. Buy things that you can trade. That's what's important. Gold will be worthless. The dollar will be worthless. Is the economy going to collapse tomorrow? Probably not.
No.
Maybe next year. Probably not. Maybe not for 10 years. Who the hell knows? But in 10 years, if it does, you'll be prepared. If it doesn't, you know what? You can go out target shooting. Have a lot of fun.
Yeah, good point.
Prepared. Be prepared. Fire starters, water purifier, means of staying warm. Keep extra
Seed.
fuel on hand. Feed. Make sure you have something to be able to feed livestock if you keep livestock. If you can't feed livestock, be able to catch livestock, because you'll need chickens and cows and
No, good
other
points.
equine type things that you can ride in your bow and arrow and your gold bar, so you can go hunting.
Correct.
But
But
that's
anyway,
just my take on it, folks.
Getting back to ESG. Okay. I said that it wasn't about controlling individuals, that is about controlling nations. Okay. And essentially, what I mean by that is if a nation like Russia right now, or like the world claims that Russia is, steps out of line, they can be penalized. If all of a sudden they no longer have any social standing in the world, then they're going to have a very hard time getting what they need until they start complying with the global dictate.
That's a good point.
And to a larger scale, that's why it's important to do what a lot of these nations have been doing, especially on our own lives. Because eventually what happens when we start getting taxed for our social credits and the things that we're going to start being restricted from what we can do because they don't want us buying this or buying that. Start buying the things you need, start storing them now, because eventually they're going to tell you what you can and cannot buy. And if someone's going to penalize you, you better have it before that happens. So if Russia didn't require importing things for their own people, to the extent I really don't know what Russia really needs to bring in. If you have a self-sustaining community and a self-sustaining country and you don't require to import stuff, you can tell everybody to go pound sand. That you do what you want and that's it. The penalties don't mean anything to you because what are they going to do to you? Import shit I'm not on import anyway?
No, that's kind of why they're in Ukraine right now. Wheat and fertilizer, and Ukrainian in the Black Sea, access to the Mediterranean. But two of the biggest reasons historically, because this is a historical war, this isn't new. They've been doing this over and over again for hundreds of years. It's because of wheat and fertilizer. Those are the two big ones. And with that,
yeah. So if they penalize Russia and so you're going to get a penalty, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it's all right. We're just taking it anyway.
Yeah.
Then when they finish annexing Ukraine and it's back into their hands, then they go, what do we need you for? What are you going to do? Sink our ships if they're in the Mediterranean? Yeah. You really going to risk that? You're going to risk blowing our planes out of the sky? Do you really want to go to that extent? No. Nobody's going to want to do that. They'll all talk bluster because right now everybody's able to launder their money through the UK, through the Ukraine.
Yeah. It's a much bigger, they're all very connected issues at various points. I mean, once you start thinking, this is why they want, going back to the very first thing we were talking about, why do they want people more TikTok oriented? Why do they want shorts? 1 minute, 1 minute. Because you can't have a conversation in 1 minute. You can't think in 1 minute about stuff that we've just talked about that's very, it's not overly complex, but it takes a minute or two to even tell someone, what do I think? For someone else to even be able to answer you, the question takes a minute just to even say it. It's like, because it's not simple.
Yeah,
The world isn't simple.
I must be ahead of the curve. I did a review on 1 minute of 5 guns the other day.
Well, you're special.
Yeah. My new challenge to all the YouTubers that are out there that are all doing these 15-second shorts or the 1 minute shorts, do me a favor. Tomorrow, pick a subject, do a 1 minute short in one take. Post your first take.
Are you kidding
Because the YouTube shorts, the biggest downfall is it doesn't allow us to save all the screw ups because you got to constantly keep deleting it to go back into that same video.
Yeah.
My 1 minute short YouTube took 48 minutes to produce because I cannot tell you how many times I got to like the 54th second and then flubbed my line. Because remember, I don't work with a script. Everything I do is I'm coming off memory or just speaking right off the cuff. So I don't do it. I actually did a 15-minute video, 15 friggin' minutes today. You watched it. You saw that video I posted today. That was first take out of the box. I can do a 15-minute rant, but I can't do a 1 minute video.
1 minute is almost impossible, man. I've tried it. I hate the shorts because it's like, you guys hear me every week. I say nothing in a minute. There's nothing that takes me 1 minute to say. It's like, I can't do it. Takes me an hour or two to do one friggin' shorts. It's like, forget it. Right? It's just chop, 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 chop. Oh my God. Start over again.
For me, the funniest thing is my one short video that has the most views on it. The most views is a 15-second video that I got hundreds and hundreds of thumbs ups for and a bunches of share and everything else and everything. One guy. No, my gun don't do that. Your gun's malfunctioning. I got news for you. Your gun is malfunctioning because no gun does what it says that your gun does. It's a myth. You don't know what I'm talking about.
We'll be back.
I now have to go tomorrow because this guy said, all right, the crux of the video is, have you ever seen in the movies when the good guy opens up his revolver and he spins the cylinder so he sees how many rounds he's got left, and you hear that brrr. So, they don't do that. Revolvers don't make that sound. The only time, not when the crane is open and the cylinder is exposed, it spins freely. There's no gearing on that. It's a spindle shaft with a cylinder on it and a bearing. There's no noise. Okay. It's not until you close the cylinder, put it in half cock, and then spin the cylinder that it produces a sound.
The click, right.
Yeah.
Some guy on YouTube has now challenged me by saying my K-frame Smith & Wesson revolver clicks when it's open because there's a notch the cylinder goes into. Now, I have a couple Smith & Wesson revolvers. None of them are K-frame. I now have to go to the FFL tomorrow and borrow a K-frame revolver so I can film a 15-second video showing him that, no, here's your K-frame revolver. No, it does not make that sound. Go get your gun and bring it to a gunsmith because your gun is malfunctioning. I don't have to tell this guy that his gun is malfunctioning because he can't just sit and watch a 15-second fucking video and enjoy it. No, my gun does that. My gun makes that noise. No, it doesn't.
When's the last time you cleaned it?
Yeah.
You got enough residue on the cylinder there.
I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, listen, I've already had a rough week. And now you're going to shit on my most popular video. What? Really? And you're going to shit on it wrong.
Was his name the King of Sanity?
Yeah, right.
When I saw that earlier, Peter, I went to my YouTube channel and I pulled up the comment just so I could see if it was the same person, and it wasn't.
Okay.
It's not one of my trolls. I know most of them. I see my trolls on a regular. It's not one of mine. It's, you know what? That's a good thing.
I was monitoring the channel. I was monitoring the channels. I just think this was a walk-in.
Yeah. But you know what? That's a good thing. The trolls only try and hit on someone who's actually doing something. So we're doing
Well, that's all
something.
right. I saved this channel, so I'm going to go back in and I'm going to crap all over every one of his little video game videos. that he
He's a
does.
little kid.
Well, he may be a little kid, but he's had his YouTube channel for 13 years.
Okay, so he's a big little kid.
Well, he's living in his mom's basement,
Probably.
and
What
she
is
doesn't
private?
know. She kicked him out 14 years ago, and she has no idea he's down there. She doesn't do laundry, or if she does, it's on the first floor.
Yeah, King of Sanity was replying on the actual Liberty First channel.
Yeah.
That's what I said. I'm monitoring the channels here, and I could see where that was, but that's all right.
Yeah.
He is as of much consequence to us as the flea on a camel's back.
Yeah.
And
There's
you want to know
always-
what's worse? The worst thing about the trolls is they think they're funny, they think they're impactful, but what they are
Yeah.
is missing an opportunity to actually learn something, to educate themselves about something, and more importantly, to actually have a better understanding of what their own rights are. Because they
Right.
would rather be disingenuous in their engagement than take the time and opportunity to actually engage in a meaningful way, or even if they have an opposing point of view that is a valid opposing point of view that we would like to debate, they deny themselves the ability. So if anything, that's why I said don't feed them, because just pity
Yeah.
them, because they're pitiful.
Yeah. They always are. And I always like to tell them when I'm doing my streams, it's like, you know what? You can have a different point of view. Just give me a reason. Give me something. Tell me.
And there was,
Yeah,
Don't
that's-
try and
Explain
explain
it.
it. Give
Explain
me a
your-
reason,
and we gave
and we can talk it. They never
we
do.
gave King of Sanity ample opportunity to raise his points, gave him ample opportunity to provide information, and he failed on all
Right.
cases.
No, he did
Or
worse
they
than fail.
I shouldn't say he, because it could be a she.
Okay, I will
fail.
call it King of Sanity. It.
Wait. No. You have to do it. They.
No, it. I was raised under he, she,
They.
it. The answer is it.
It.
It failed because it lied. Because I fact checked.
well, the fact that the user identifies itself as king would allude to the fact that they already chose a gender.
Yeah.
As you do not have female kings. Anyway,
Because you can't have a female king. How dare you?
Ooh, now we're in trouble. Now we're in
How
trouble.
dare you?
that's
Take
it.
my
Listen, everybody,
beard shake.
listen, you're the king of your castle. You're the queen of your castle. When you're outside, you're not a king or queen of anything. You're an individual. Stop calling yourselves queens. Stop calling yourself kings, and start identifying yourself as people like everybody else. Nobody is superior. Nobody is beneath. Treat everybody as you would like to be treated, and stop trying to elevate yourself above anyone else. Stop it. It's meaningless and it's bullshit. Oh, I'm a queen. I'm a king. No, you're an asshole, is what you are. Just be a regular asshole like everybody else. Everybody's an asshole to one extent or another, but that's what makes people great, being an asshole. Just be your own asshole. Not a king, not a queen. That's it. All right, listen, I'm getting a bug out of here. Pete, if you'd be so kind, hit me up in a couple. I want to give you some updates on some other issues. Michael Marshall just up and left. He's gonna go wrestle his dog.
He's in the room somewhere.
Yeah, he's over there doing something. His life is upside down and backwards right now too. He's got a lot on his hands. Tracy's got a lot on her hands. Nah, that's all right, brother. We're good.
Yeah.
We all got stuff we got to worry about.
Yep.
So with that, I'm Frank Johnson. I'm signing out. You guys be safe, shoot straight. Vass, Michael, Peter, love you guys. Jan, Dal. Who I know I've seen somebody else in there jumping around in there
That was
before.
me.
Who was
That
that?
was me.
Yeah, I know that, but who was? I've seen somebody else in there earlier than that before.
No, I'm
Asian
not.
I don't know. I
Black
can't
was on
remember.
a little bit.
Hey,
Oh, yeah,
there you
Asian
go.
Black. That's right.
Yeah, there he is. I said hello to him before, but love you guys too. I'm also ashamed of us tonight. As I look around this room, not a single one of us is wearing green.
I don't even own anything green. You know what? I got a green halo from the camera. There you go. There's my
My green
green.
soda.
There you go. Nothing. Not a guy. Wait. Hold
Yeah,
on.
you got the light thing.
I still have my green Christmas ball that had some mistletoe on it, so I can get a kiss under the balls for holidays. All right.
Hey, now.
See you guys later. Love you guys. I know somebody would catch that.
I
Love you
caught
guys.
it.
Catch you later.
All right.
Have a good night, Frank.
All right, now
We've been
Mike's supposed
going
to sign off.
for closing on 2.5 hours now, so probably
Yeah.
should go ahead and wrap this up.
Yeah.
Indeed, gentlemen. Plus, he left, and now he wants me to call him, but left me on air, so I don't know how I'm supposed to deal with that either. Gotta love my Frankie.
Gotta love it.
Bobby, while you're still on air and talking to the internets. Okay,
This is funny.
we try.
So basically, go ahead and wrap this up. And like we say every week, okay, it's up to you guys to get involved. There's only so much that we can do. There's only so many people that we can reach without your help, and there's only so many ears that hear us without you helping us spread the word. Okay, with that, I want you to like, share, and comment, and subscribe to this channel on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you see us. Also, we are in the middle of our membership drive for 2023. And with that, you can get access to exclusive content and many other benefits that are going to be coming in the future. But not only that, it kind of shows us that, hey, you agree with what we're doing and you support what we're doing. Okay. Everything we do is out of pocket, and quite frankly, it gets quite expensive to do this. I mean, just bringing this show to you every week is expensive. Okay. With the subscription that we have for the streaming services and everything else, these costs add up. And when you look at our website and the various things we do there, okay, we've got quite a bit of money that we've laid out, not to mention the traveling we've done and so forth. So we just are asking our fans and our supporters to help us in just a little bit, so we can actually do more. Okay. And with that, it also says that you want us to represent you and to allow your voice to be amplified with the voice of others, so we can actually start the change that is needed across this country. I want to thank everybody that's watching. I want to thank everybody that likes and shares this. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. So thank you. With that, we will see you next week, Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. And let's go ahead and say good night.
Night, everyone.
Subscribe.
Subscribe.